Hey guys, and welcome to season 4 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host Savia Rocks, and in this season, we get to remember and reminisce back in time with some of our guests like...
Hey, we are Entity,
and you're listening to
the Us People podcast
with Savia Rocks.
Hey, my name is Stephen Ridley, and you're listening to the Us People podcast with the lovely Savia Rocks, keeping it positive.
Hi, my name is James Green. I'm a TV presenter, sports reporter and journalist.
Hi, this is Joy Langley, and I'm the author of Navigating Stress.
Hey, this is Travis Glossop. I am a creative radio producer for Kiss FM, and you're listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
We highlight the strengths of our cultures, talking about diversity and inclusion, and speaking out loud and proud about who we are.
I was never that good. I was determined. I had a love for the sport, and that always fueled me.
But arriving into London and kind of growing up in a really difficult situation, trying to kind of make sense of my life with with at home and not being accepted by the people around me, because there was, in the 60s, there was tremendous racism growing up in London.
It's great. I'm glad, because I'll be honest, I didn't really work that hard at uni, so it was good to leave uni and really get on it, really because I also, as a person, I think I value productivity. A lot of people live to work. I think I am one of the work to live guys, but because my work is amazing, that's all right with me. So as a person, I go to bed happy when I've had a productive day.
We've also saved the best till last by honouring another artist and showcasing their talent as our new theme song, with none other than your host, Savia Rocks, featuring in their song. So guys, enjoy, stay creative, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Thomas Bickley, and I'm a director, writer, producer, actor, and script supervisor, and you've been listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
Peace of mind, gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host Savia Rocks, and today I am humbled to have Thomas here with me. Thomas is a director, writer, producer, actor, and script supervisor. Thomas, thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Us People podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's very nice to be asked to do something like this, so I really appreciate it.
No, I'm waiting to hear your story, so this is going to be completely cool for me. So, Thomas, my first question for you is, could you tell me about yourself, where you grew up, but also how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from Birmingham originally. From an area called Albury, which
I know that.
You do know that, yeah. So it's not far from Edgbaston, but right on the outskirts of Birmingham. And then I started off actually in law, so I didn't actually go into filmmaking or anything like that for quite a while. So I worked my way up through that, went to Nottingham Trent, and then pretty much after finishing that, getting my degree, it was a gap year that I was on, and I was doing some traveling with some friends, and I was just thinking to myself, filmmaking is something I love doing. It's something I've got a passion for, so I thought, why don't I just do it? So I went off and did a master's in London, and then just took off from there.
See, I love that. See, when you find what is right for you. So, did you leave the law behind completely, or was law still on the side, or did filming and everything just completely take over?
The filming just took over, to be honest. I mean, I still have a lot of love for the law and doing that sort of thing. It's definitely something I think about from time to time, but no, filmmaking is very much the full-time focus.
I love that. I completely love that. So let's talk about defining you as a person. So can you define yourself as a person and who you see when you look in the mirror? But on the reverse of that question, has there ever been a time where you have looked in a mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you, Thomas? How did you manage to go from one transition of you maybe not recognizing who you are to being full, no, I wouldn't say fully content, but in a place where you feel like you can be happy and move forward and continue your journey?
I think for me, in terms of just my general personality, I'm a type of person that if I have a goal in mind, it's something that I'm just going to work my ass off to do until I get there. And then once I get there, then I'll think of the next steps. So every time I look in the mirror, that's very much like, okay, where are you? Where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? That kind of process is what's going on in my head all the time. So the transition really from law to filmmaking wasn't particularly difficult for me. And especially when you think of a lot of things, there's a lot of skills that you can develop that you can easily translate over and adapt into another profession. So, like for example, with my work in the law, where you have to do so much research and get all this insight into cases, not just the stuff that you're looking at there in front of you, but all this other past legislation, acts of parliament, as well as case law and all that kind of thing. So you have to pull out all the details for that. And then moving forwards, because I freelance in many of the roles that you mentioned. So the main role I freelance in is script supervising, which is all the continuity in films and TV. And that is 100% detail oriented. So you need to be on the lookout for everything in a shot and make sure that it's there for the right reasons. If it's not, or if the actor's moving wrong, saying something wrong, it needs to be twigged and it needs to be changed, and you have to have it perfect.
That's a lot of detail. that's something a pain. So let's go through them. So you talked a little bit about being a scriptwriter, and then you spoke about being an actor. Let's talk about you being an actor. But because they both kind of combine into two when you think of it, a script supervisor and then being an actor, they kind of coincide and help each other. Let's talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, so because the course that I did when I first came over to filmmaking was in directing, I was taught by some very great people there, some practicing directors and things like that. And it was very much their advice was, if you want to direct someone, then you need to know like who you're directing, like what is their method, what is their process. If you don't understand that, then you're coming at it completely blind. So I started doing a bit of acting here and there just to get that kind of mentality and think, okay, if I'm going to direct an actor, what are they thinking? What's their process? How do they see these characters? How do they see the script? So I did it very much for that reason. And it wasn't like major, like huge roles or anything like that. It was a lot of short film stuff, but it gives you that insight into it. So when you come to doing your own stuff, you're like, okay, if I tweak this character like this, then I know that this actor is going to be thinking this about it, and these questions are going to come up. And having those questions in the back of my mind, having the answers to them, just makes it a lot easier for the actors when you're on the set, because you can just instantly tell them what they need to know and they just get on with it.
Is everybody obedient when you're telling them what to do?
No, never just like that. No, there's a lot of, I mean, you always have those answers prepared, but there's always something that will come up when you have to have a minute just to think about it. And then you're like, okay, why don't you try what you're thinking of? Because I need to go away and actually think about what you're saying. Yeah. So I need to see you perform this before I can actually say whether I want that or not. So it's very much giving the actors and giving the crew as well just the freedom to explore what they need to do and then work out, okay, is that right for what I want and what this vision for the project is? Or do I need to tweak something, or can I go with it? So it's very much that.
It's actually quite scary when you think of it being an actor for a second, because number one, you're in the spotlight. Number two, I know that a lot of actors have said to me, who I've spoken to, sometimes if you mess up on your words, you can improvise on occasions, you can. And it kind of does work. But when it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But also, what about it? Because now we have director, writer, and producer last. So talk to me about each one of those individually, because I understand the writer one, being a writer myself, and I know how difficult it can be being a writer and having necessarily, depending on what kind of writer you are, having a script in your head that you want to get down and having all these characters and voices that you need to put in place and planning it out. How does this work for you?
So with writing, I think, because I've written quite a different set of things. So I've done TV scripts, short film scripts, docudramas, all that kind of thing. So I've done a mix of fictional and factual stuff. I always find the hardest bit for me is kind of letting go of something and letting someone else look at it and say, okay, tweak this bit, tweak that bit, because you just become very protective of what you're writing.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think, like, certainly through work as a director and even producing as well, you need to have someone else looking over and just checking things and making sure it flows. Because I was speaking to one of my friends recently, actually, who's a musician in a band, and he writes a lot of music and things like that. And he says you can easily fall into this trap where what you've written is a good thing, but because you've read it so many times or you've looked at it so many times in such in-depth ways that you think, okay, something's not working here. So you start changing things. And if you just have that outsider input, they can just be like, that works as it is. You don't need to touch it. It's fine. Yeah. But when you're second guessing yourself, it's always that, no, I need to make it that much better. And like bringing it back to directing as well, the editing process is always interesting, because as you're going through and piecing the thing together, it's always very much, you see a shot and you think, oh, that shot, I could have made that so much better, or I could have used this shot somewhere else and just extended it a little bit and used that little aspect. So you always think of these kind of things as you're editing it, and it's knowing when you need to step back and just let it be, because it might be fine as it is. And if you tweak it too much, then it's going to ruin it.
That's true. Let's talk about what a day in Thomas's life is like. You do so much, right? And even before we started the podcast, I said to you, Thomas, how do you find time for yourself? And then you said true. But at the same time, I would love to know what a day is like from when you wake up in the morning, Thomas, to when you decide what you're going to do throughout your day, and how that actually plans out.
Yeah, so it depends if I'm on set or not. If I'm on set, I'm usually up at a certain time because I need to be on set for a specific time, and there's no getting around if you're late or anything like that. You must be there for that time. So you always aim to get there at least half an hour before. And then life on a set is very much depending on the role, because obviously with script supervising is the one that pays the bills at the moment. So for that, it's very much, you get to set, you've got your notes ready, you've got to go through them, you've got to review everything before you get on there. You need to know what scenes you're shooting, who the characters in the scenes are, where they're coming from, where they're going to. You need to make sure you have that all planned out, because as soon as you get into the blocking with the director, who's most likely going to do that as soon as they get onto set, you need to be there on hand for the director. If he or she's got any questions, that is like, okay, does this thing need to be in this scene, or can we get around it? You need to be there to tell them that. So when you're on set, there's very little time to breathe, or I think, pretty much from start to finish. So you're rushed off your feet a lot in that, and then as soon as you get home, it's straight to bed, really. And then when I'm not on set, when I have a moment to breathe, if I can say it that way, it's very much, I like to get up early, so I usually get up around about 7:30, 8 o'clock time, and then first thing I'm doing is looking at emails, responding to people, seeing if there's any work going, logging anything that comes through and just scheduling it out. And then once I've got through all my emails and any correspondence, then I go straight into my writing. And then that just dominates the rest of the day, very much in the same way as if I was on set. It's just that is the focus. Maybe take a short amount of time for lunch, but then always writing.
What is the most difficult aspects of being artistic or creative?
I think it's, certainly for me, is when you've got a lot of ideas swimming around your head, you want to focus on them all at different times. So, I mean, because I'm writing a few things at the moment, you get to a stage where it's, I really want to write this bit because I've got such a great idea here. And then you have to get that out. But then you know that you're in the middle of writing something else that perhaps is much more urgent for you to complete. So it's, okay, keep that idea in the back of your mind, but please focus on this thing. And keeping that focus is the hardest thing.
Do you ever wake up? This is just a spontaneous thing it happens to me. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and have something in your head, think that you've written it down, then wake up for real and realize that you haven't?
Absolutely, all the time.
Those are one of the things that absolutely get me in hysterics, because I think...
I mean, I was watching I think I was watching The Lord of the Rings actually at the weekend, and I had an idea for something just pop into my head about halfway through the film, and I was just like on the edge of my seat, just trying to get off. Like, I need to leave the film just so I can write this down.
That happens a lot of the time with all of us creative people. We have so much going on in our mind that we're like, I need to get it down, and then something else takes over, and our mind kind of pans between the left and the right brain quite a lot, which is really interesting. Talk to me about some of your inspirations, and I mean some of your inspirations within people, and more importantly, I want to hear this, your film choices.
It's a very difficult question because there's so many, and when you look into the subject long enough, just so many more pop out to you for different reasons. For directing, I'd say, and it's a difficult choice, I'd say top 3 directors for me right now is probably Sergio Leone, who did the Dollars trilogy and Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America. Georges Méliès, who's a bit of an older director. He was around end of the 19th century, early 20th century. And he very much pioneered like modern CGI and that kind of thing. His most famous film is Le Voyage dans la Lune, which is all about a trip to the moon.
I like that.
And what he does is very much, he has all these very artistic, beautiful backgrounds painted in his shots. And then he'll have someone come in a costume that's placed perfectly to take over as a character that's painted on the background and just transform them into a live action being. So his stuff is very interesting. If you go down that rabbit hole,
I don't mind. That's the type of thing that I would definitely look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third one, this is difficult because I know as soon as I say someone, I'm going to think, no, there's somebody else. It's hard not to say Hitchcock, to be honest.
I thought so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like a lot of the more of the old-fashioned directors. When I first got into it, it's very much I was thinking along the lines of Scorsese, Spielberg.
I thought you was going to say him, actually.
Yeah, lots of those were the first kind of directors I was getting into, and I was like, okay, I really like that stuff. I really like those types of films, so that was the thing. But then sitting down, looking back through cinema, like, I just fell in love with a lot of old-fashioned cinema. So I love films like Casablanca, for example, is one of my favourite films.
That's a good one.
And
that is a good one.
There's another one called Kind Hearts and Coronets, which was made by, I want to say it's Alexandra McKendrick. That's probably wrong. It was an Ealing comedy. So. But that's a great film. That's got Sir Alec Guinness in it, and he plays 7 different roles. And it's all this murder mystery kind of thing. But that's a great film to watch as well.
I've seen quite a few people who are great actors being able to play so many different roles consistently. That's a talent within itself. That is definitely a talent within itself. So let's talk about education for a second. So we know that we've been through law, and we know, how do you educate yourself for anybody who wants to get into any of these things that you do on a daily basis? And I can clearly see that you love them. How can someone get into it who might feel stuck or might feel like they don't have a direction? What would your advice be to them?
For me, I'm quite a reader, so when I'm interested in something, I'll always delve into it much further than the ordinary person would probably do. That's so good. So as I was saying with the films, like how I got into a lot of those old-fashioned films, and the directors I mentioned previously, is very much like picking through the past and the whole subject and seeing, okay, where does it come from initially? Yeah. How does that start? How does it progress? What's the new kind of stuff that goes into it? And I work from the start in the similar way. So, like, as I was talking about Georges Méliès, for example, like the things he was doing was very simplistic. You know, anybody could go out, provided they have either good artistic talent themselves or a good painter on hand. Anybody could do some of the films that he was doing at that time, and not for huge budgets either. So you look at what's working for those kind of people and how they sort of pioneered aspects of that, and you try and take on board stuff that they've been doing. and then translate it further forward and think, okay, I'll unpick that aspect of their character and what they were doing, and then I'll look at someone a bit more recent that I perhaps was really interested in, like Steven Spielberg, for example, and just unpick what his techniques are and little things that he did, especially on his earlier films. Like if you look at Jaws, for example, the animatronic shark in Jaws broke, so he basically had to cut it out of the film, and it ended up working for the better for him.
I'll never forget that film.
Yeah, well, absolutely, it's a classic, and I'd say definitely delve a bit deeper into something that you enjoy, because you might find something in that just inspires you, and that's what you want to do, and that helps push you forwards, because you think, okay, this person did it this way, I can do that.
Of course.
And then when you have that mentality, there's nothing holding you back.
I like that. See, that's what we need. We need more people like you, Thomas, who see the positivity in things, because a lot of people at the moment, especially with everything that's going on in the world, I think they feel like everything is a setback for them. And I want to interview people like yourself to let them know that regardless of where you come from or your background is, doesn't matter. You can do what you want to do. Sometimes it can be difficult. Sometimes they are definitely challenges. But I want to let everyone know that you can do it. So here's one that I would love to ask you. What is the funniest line you've ever heard in a film?
There's not one specific that jumps out to mind, but there's a couple of actors I've worked with that certainly certainly comes to mind. I've done some work on doctors for the BBC, and
cool.
There's an actress in that called Dido Miles, who's always got something to say that will make you laugh.
I like that.
I think, who else was there? There was someone, I can't remember who it was now, but there was someone who really got me at one point. I think, I want to say it was Liz Hurley, actually. I don't think it was, but I think it was a feature film I was on. And it was one of those spur of the moment things, like, they just said the line wrong, but how they said it came out so hilarious. It was brilliant. We were dining off that for quite a while.
I like that. No, I definitely like that. So we've spoken about some of your inspirations. Let's talk about the best advice you have ever received, because sometimes having the best advice from someone can put us on the right track, enabling us to be able to do what we want to do and how we do it. Is there anyone in the world, and it could be a combination of different people, because in our lives we're always transitioning into different people every day. Is there anyone that you would say has given you really good advice in your life that you take with you?
That's a really interesting question for me, because I usually find I'm the person that's given out a lot of advice at times. Okay. I think there's definitely several people. I mean, friends and family are always going to give you a direction. And I think it's subtle things more than anything. It's maybe it's an action more than a word that just makes you think on it for a little bit. And in terms of filmmaking, definitely my lead tutor at the university I was at is someone who pushed me forward, because the whole reason I got into script supervising was very much on their advice, saying, if you want to learn the director's craft, because as soon as you leave university, you're not going to be directing anything.
That's true.
That's just a fact, because no one's going to hire you to do it. So he said the best way to learn techniques and things from directors is to work closely with them. And doing script supervising, continuity work, you work so closely with them that you're always on hand to see how they're working. You're always there for the blocking, so you see how they interact with the actors. You're there to see what shots they have planned out and their notes and things. And then you can see what works for them and how you might translate that to yourself and that sort of thing. So I think it's not one word or one action from one person. It's a lot of little things that come together, and you just take on board everything you can and just think about certain things, like how can I use what's working for this person for myself, and just reworking it to your strengths.
I like that.
So,
I definitely like that. So let's talk about the word disappointment for a second. There's a reason behind this. When you go into any field, it doesn't matter what field it is. It could be acting, singing, songwriting. It doesn't matter. Photography. There are a lot of times where we have consistent competition. Natural, right?
Yeah.
But has there ever been a time where you were disappointed in something that you didn't receive or get within yourself? How did you turn that around to use that disappointment as a fuel to push yourself forward?
well, I mean, certainly after the COVID stuff,
Oh yeah.
in the film industry, we did have a boom of productions. So work was very consistent. But after that, when things started to normalize a bit more, there were definitely gaps for me in terms of what was coming up. So I had quite a lot of time where I was not working, and I was just getting really frustrated. And you find that as well a lot around the winter period, like Christmas time and that, because a lot of production just shut down at that point. So there's nothing anyway. And in those times, because like you might get the odd short film pop up, or someone drops out of something last minute and they're like, we need someone to fill in just for a week or something. And because of your situation, you're very worried about your situation. So you think, okay, I need that work. Like it's not can't pass it up kind of thing. It's I need that work, and you don't always get it. So it's very much when you're in that. Like even for me recently, I think I've had a bit of a patch of that just over March. It's very much kind of, how good you are. If someone's invested in you and brought you onto something, then that you have that quality, you have that skill, even if you haven't got this particular project or whatever it is that you've gone for, deep down that you are capable of doing it. And you need to hold on to that, because if you think, okay, I'm worthless, I can't get this job, then what's going to happen to you? You're not doing anything then. You're just feeling sorry for yourself, putting yourself down, and that affects anything else you do. So if you see something else come up, your negative energy is going to affect you enough that you might put out a shitty application so you don't get the next job. Yeah. Whereas if you just remember that you still have those skills, you still have that capability, you still have the talent to do it, then you hold that in the back of your head, and then the next one that comes up, you go out and knock it out again. And you might get lucky on that one, and someone says, okay, come on board. And then you meet a whole range of new people who invest in you as well, and they might bring you onto something else following that. So it's trying to keep that positivity going. It's trying to keep focused on what you want to do. Is the key thing to do when you're stuck in that little area of negativity. Just remember that you can do the thing that you're doing. And don't let anyone tell you different.
I think we all have that. I think we all have that time in our life where we feel like that. It doesn't matter how successful we are, which leads to my next question. Can you define what success is? Because we all have a different definition of what success means to us. But what does the word success mean to you?
Success to me, I think, is if I've failed at something or I've messed something up, if I can come back and sort of turn that around, play it to my strengths, maybe take the weaknesses that I experienced through that failure and turn them on their head, improve them. And then the next time something like that happens, I can combat it and I can be there and say, okay, yeah, I can deal with this. It's no problem. That's very much the success for me. It's not just about getting to a goal, and it's you can have a goal and that's important, but it's what you're going to do after you reach that goal, because you should always aim to reach those goals, whatever. But you need to know where you're going to step after you've got that goal.
I like that. That makes sense. Do you have a plan in your mind, or do you naturally... Some people are very spontaneous, actually. Some people don't have a plan. They just do things spontaneously and it gets to where they want them to get to. Do you always have a plan, or do you structure things or do it spontaneously within yourself?
It's very much a mix of things. So I do have a plan in the general sense of this is where I want to get to. And sometimes I might have a milestone of... I want to be doing this at this point. So that is a general plan in that sense, but certainly in the film industry, you don't know what's going to come up in terms of work. So in that regard, it's very spontaneous, because right now I don't know if I might be working next week or not.
Yeah.
And if something comes up, there's a good chance I might be working next week. So you need to take that, and you need that little bit of spontaneity as well as the plan. So I think it's important to have a mix, to have, a general focus and an idea of where you want to go and when you want to get there, but never shut out any kind of spontaneous opportunity that comes your way, because you never know where that's going to lead you to.
That is true. That is definitely true. One of the things I do want to ask you is, how does it feel mentally and emotionally not knowing what is coming next? Because a lot of people can have anxiety. Believe me, a lot of people can have anxiety not knowing where. And you know, I've had so many conversations with so many creative people about, you know, they have bills to pay, they have rent to pay. And obviously these are the most important things, to have a roof over your head, food to eat. So, but the creative industry is extremely hard unless you know somebody who knows someone. I used to think it was about your talent, but now as I got older, I realize it's more about your networking system and who you have around you in your network that determines whether or not you will be a success or not. And that's such a major thing. And I would love to ask that question to you of how you feel emotionally and especially mental health wise when it comes to not knowing what is coming next.
It's very chaotic. Is the best way I can put it. I always keep the positive mentality going, because I mean, generally I'd consider myself a positive person, but I think it just helps you in general, just like, if you have that positive mindset, then you can't worry as much. Yes, there's things that will make you anxious, but you can kind of deal with it, and you can think through solutions to that by keeping that positive outlook. It does get frustrating. I'm not going to lie. It is frustrating at times when there's just nothing going on, and you just think, okay, how the hell do I do this? Like, I mean, as I said, I've done a few productions for BBC and that, but that never guarantees me anything, to be honest. You know, sometimes it's very much, you might even find yourself like trying to fight your way into a short film, even though you've got this big catalogue, just because people like to rely on those they've worked with before, people that they know. So most of your opportunities tend to be kind of, you're coming in to just fill in for someone, and things like that. So you always have to be at the best of your ability. So you need the positive mindset to do that. And then to widen that network for yourself, so you can get onto those other things. But yeah, it's very difficult cracking into things, because this industry is very much not just simply who you know, but it's people like familiarity. They like to use the same people over and over, and it's very difficult to break into something like that.
I think it's the old gatekeepers who are at the top. They don't want to let the youngsters come in and take over, and then they feel like they're worthless, which I feel is bad at the end of the day. And there are a lot of gatekeepers who have, you know, hidden agendas and still want that power, because a lot of the world is about power, you know, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that will change in the years to come. If I said to you, Thomas, and put you on a desert island, for example, and said you're allowed to have one actor, one activist, and one musician, who would you take on that island and why?
Oh, okay.
I like this one.
I mean, for activist, I think the first name that jumped out to me was actually Nelson Mandela.
Hey, he's been out a few times. Yep.
I mean, he's an extremely smart man as well. So if you're trapped in a situation, you need a guy like Nelson Mandela on your side.
That's true.
Actor. I mean, my favorite actor of all time is James Stewart, so I'll probably have to say him. And musician Johnny Cash.
Do you know what? That would be an interesting night.
It would.
That would be a really, really... I'm thinking of it now. There would be comedy. There would be a lot of politics, you know, and I think a slight overwhelmingness knowing that all these people that you want to be there is there. That's pretty cool. So if I was to say to you, if you had an unlimited amount of money, and I said to you, Thomas, you can do anything in the world, what would you do with that unlimited amount of money?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think logically you'd want to invest what you can out of it. Certainly a piece of advice that I did have was very much like, if you do have a degree of success in this thing, don't like immediately jump to the big house or anything like that, because you never know how long it's going to last. So I don't think there'd be any major change in what I do specifically, because you want to make sure that what you put your money into is going to be beneficial to you to a degree, and for a decent amount of time that gives you stability. I think you can use some of that just to fight the causes that you're happy with, and just improve your circumstances to a degree. But I don't think you should like immediately go out and just throw the money around and say, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this, because you just burn through it so fast.
Oh yeah, you would.
I mean, some of the productions I've worked on is, you get higher paychecks on some compared to others, and you think, oh my God, I'm rich. And it's like, no, that money's not going to last you that long. So.
Oh man, see, no, that is true. That is absolutely true. So let's talk about your legacy. You got a long time for a legacy, believe me. But if I were to turn around and say to you, after all is said and done, and you believe that you've done everything that you feel, not just that you are capable of, but your body is saying, you know what, it's time that I'm done. How would you like to be remembered in this world?
That's a good question. I think I'd prefer people just to remember some of the advice that I give them. Maybe
you sound like you give exceptional advice, to be honest with you. Honestly,
I think that's the one thing that I'd think I'd want people to take away, is just if they've hit a bad situation or something and I've told them something that's helped them. I think that's the most important thing.
I think that's right. I think that's definitely right. When was the last time you felt totally at peace with yourself?
Pretty much today. So.
Hey, that's good for me. If you feel at peace, I feel at peace. It's so good for me. Talk to me about where people can find you. So, for example, before we get to that, I will ask you, if anyone is in a bad position and feel like they're stagnant in the world, what advice would you give them to uplift them? Because I'm interested, because I know in the beginning of the podcast you said usually you're the one giving out all the advice. So I'm really intrigued to ask you this question of what you would say. It could be friends or family, and 9 times out of 10 when we hear something from a stranger, it hits us a little bit harder, or because it's honest truth, compared to when our friends or family, sometimes when a friend or family member say something to us, there's like a slight protection within what they're saying, like they filter it, whereas when it's coming from a stranger, they have this instinct to just be honest. What would your advice be to anyone who's feeling down at the moment and needs uplifting?
So I think, first of all, you need to just look at the situation you're in from as objective a position as you can. Think of what you're doing, why that thing isn't coming off the way you want it to, and so reevaluate yourself in a sense. The craziest thing for you to do is to just keep doing the same thing. So you need to identify what is not working for you and address it. And if there's something that you feel is too far beyond your control to address it in the way that you're thinking, you need to address that and to push forward with whatever you're doing. I think you need to kind of step aside from it for a second and just think outside the box and think, okay, what other angles can I approach this from? Because if the angle that you're doing it from and you've reassessed and you think, okay, there's nothing I'm doing specifically wrong here that shouldn't help me, then I think you need to step back and think, okay, I'm probably not coming at this from the right way. So I need to think how else I can come at this. And then that will usually help you find a route around certain issues. Like for an example for myself, obviously doing so many different things, that is very much my route in combating that, because when I've got that stagnation on like script supervising, for example, I'm like, okay, there's nothing coming up here. What can I do to help out my situation in a way and keep me focused on things? I focus on the writing side of what I do in that sense. So I'll push through that, and usually I can probably find more writing jobs than script supervising jobs over the Christmas period, because that's when people tend to relax and the productions wind down at that point. So that's when a lot of the writing stuff comes up. So you look for an angle that can keep you busy, but is still relevant to what you're doing. And you just try and pick that apart, because you don't know if it's specifically you that's got the issue there, especially if you've addressed it and you think, okay, there's nothing that's majorly wrong here. It could just be the circumstances of that area itself aren't picking up. So put that to the side for a bit. Don't walk away from it completely, but just focus on something else, focus on another angle, and think, okay, if I work on this for a bit, how will this boost me? How will this help me? Yeah. And then do that while you're waiting, because that keeps you focused, it keeps your positivity good, it keeps your mental health good, and it will probably just assist your circumstances a lot more, because you're getting something from that. So it's not the thing that you want to be doing per se, but it might actually give you a new perspective on things, and may give you a new way of looking at things, may give you a new network of people to talk to and connect with, and then you can weave in that other aspect that you really want to focus on.
Yep, there's definitely something to go by, guys. I moved that. I'll definitely like that one. So my last question for you is, I would love for everyone to be able to find you on all your social media platforms. Tell us where they can see you, find you, hear about you. This is your time.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, and Instagram is probably the main social media channel I follow. So you can follow me at Mr. TB94. I can't say I'm the most active social media person ever, but you may see me pop up from time to time with some things. But yeah, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn, Thomas Bickley. And if you're very lucky, I might be on Twitter at Thomas Bickley1. So,
okay. Are you a big Twitter fan, or are you just...
I don't tend to use it, to be honest. I'm not a huge social media fan in general, I'll be honest, but
no, I know that feeling.
It's something I dip into and out of every now and again. Instagram's the main one, though.
No, that's fine, Thomas. Before I have the pleasure of saying, well, actually, I am going to have the pleasure of saying thank you, which is now. So, Thomas, I do want to say thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast, for blessing us today. No. You're welcome, for coming on the show and telling us about your background, where you come from, how it all works for you, you know, your ups and downs, your lows, your highs. I really appreciated the conversation. It's flown by so quickly.
Yes,
guys, please go out and look at Thomas and what he does. He does something great. He gives great advice, and I thoroughly believe that now too, because I've heard it myself too. Guys, thank you so much. Thomas, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, you're more than welcome, guys. I want to thank you for listening to the Ask People podcast, and please remember, you can subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can also donate to the Ask People podcast by simply going to the Savia Rocks website, or just type in paypal.me/us people podcast. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind, peace of mind, peace of mind. I need a solution. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with her. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with confusion. Yeah, I'm done. I need a solution. Peace of mind, peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. Peace of mind, peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. Peace of mind, peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind. Gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. Peace of mind, peace of mind.
People say that having a peace of mind is trying to find a consistency of calmness within ourselves, to crave for a clarity that drives us through our emotional journey of life, to never let a person's judgment manifest into a fear inside of us, learning to believe in our ability to shine through the darkest moments and tunnels when we cannot see the light. Patience being our light for forgiveness and strength, to believe in our destiny. If you want real peace of mind, one needs to stop fighting their inner thoughts and embrace them with love, because love is the most amazing and beautiful strength that we have to conquer our peace of mind. Make your thoughts impact a nation by keeping them true and honest, especially to yourself, but make your peace of mind protect you when you don't have strength to embrace anything else. Find your peace of mind by listening to your heart.
Peace of mind, gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and peace of mind.
I'm not the most talkative person in the world, so yeah, that was quite a new experience. That could just been the actor in me, you know.
Peace of mind, gotta keep my energy and peace of mind. I protect my energy and